sources of entertainment based solely on ulterior motives that are not focused on the enrichment of the actual piece of fiction that they're producing, and are instead more interested in using the medium as a vehicle to push their ideological and political beliefs, almost like subtly and sometimes not so subtly banging our heads with lessons of morality and political correctness, otherwise known as
the message.
These are things that are complicated to even identify in many cases, and sometimes some failures of the piece of media are nothing more and nothing less than good old incompetence, so diving into it can be a minefield and can very quickly turn into heavy political matters. And this is not to go into everything else that surrounds it, like how influential the gaming journalism and excess media journalism are, and how they have proven to go as far as to lie and misrepresent matters to serve their agendas, such as the situation with Black Myth Wukong, the almost situation with Space Marine 2, and the constant occurrences of masking every bit of criticism lobbed at any protected piece of media, be it games or shows or movies, as alt-right, bigoted, ist and phobic attacks from irrelevant loud minorities online, completely shutting down all discourse around the matter and pushing forth the narrative that anyone questioning these issues is one of those vile things, and totally ignoring the fact that with each and every single additional thing that they push, more and more people become further and further disinterested in these pieces of media, hence their recent financial flops, and of course the true reason as to why this discourse grows louder and more constant, with seemingly every announcement of a new game or show or movie getting mired in often very toxic arguments online because of both extremes coming to blows. Like I said, deeply complicated and divisive matters that are not there just to be brushed over and require at least a small level of seriousness and maturity to actually dive into. These are things that can absolutely poison a channel, especially if it's a channel that built its fanbase on completely different content. This is something that even I am afraid of. I started making my content because of being sick of it all and wanting to be another voice against it, but one that aspires to use common sense and call out whatever bullshit I find wrong, no matter what side it is coming from, hence the videos on Independence. But this is still not the type of road that I want to go down perpetually. I wish to eventually carry on making videos about games, as it is what I am mostly passionate about. Videos about praising the things that I love and roasting the things that I don't. Talking about the industry, doing retrospectives, commenting on things that I find problematic and on things that I find exciting. Calling out predatory monetization schemes and telling executives who think we shouldn't be comfortable owning our games to go fuck themselves. Hell, maybe even making cringy top 10 lists. I don't really care. I just want to share my love of this medium through topics devoid of the toxicity involving these political and ideological matters. But for now, that is hard to avoid, through no fault of our own. Every other week there is something else going on, and we're still very much in the thick of it. And so, here I am, at least until things calm down.
I would gladly retire from the world, were such a day to dawn.
But in regards to the Actman, it seems that my assessment was wrong. I don't think the Actman is not willing to go deeper into these kinds of matters in his content. I think he's very happy to do so. He's just either completely uneducated on these matters and therefore deeply conflicted on what to think, or disingenuously pretending that he cares and wants to have a moderate conversation, but in reality, he's already made up his mind a long time ago and has no such genuine interest whatsoever, while also refusing to admit this onto himself and even to his audience. If the Actman didn't have an interest in shifting his content towards this kind of thing, I would have no qualms with it whatsoever, because it's understandable by the situations that I just got done mentioning. But from what I keep seeing, this is not the case at all. The Actman is perfectly happy to lean into these matters and talk about them. He's just not happy to actually do it in good faith, with good intentions, or with any interest in the matter whatsoever. And what is particularly annoying with the way that he conducts himself in these matters is this duality that he seems to have. On one hand, he presents himself as just this dude, neutral, chill, willing to participate in moderate conversation, have a debate, lay things down, reflect on them, and maybe even attempt to find a common ground. But on the other hand, he's on the far opposite side of that. He claims he's sick of the supposed pussy-ass political ideologues masquerading as gaming content creators who serve only to invade our gaming space and shove political agendas down the throats of any unfortunate enough to consume their dogshit content. He even calls them parasites, just like I do. At face value, it's like, hey, common ground with me, because I too am sick of these political ideologues masquerading as gaming content creators, except I go a step higher and point at the actual people to blame for these political injections into the gaming space. I'm sick of political ideologues and activists masquerading as developers, directors, actors, writers, etc. in the actual leading positions of these entertainment industries. Hell, let's even be honest here, they don't even masquerade as anything. They proudly display what their functions are and their radical opinions. This is what often gets them hired in the first place, since their politics are the correct and approved ones to have in the corporate space right now. Many of them even proudly display their disdain for their own communities by inciting divisiveness, with us versus them bullshit mentalities and attitudes that often result in comments such as "don't like it, don't buy it," or "don't like it, don't watch it," as they happily take pre-established successful IPs, fully knowing that only through them can they actually be relevant. Only through them can they actually have an impact, because if starting their own shit with their own IPs, no one will care. Everyone has always been able to have their own space within our industry. Their narrative that there are gatekeepers is total bullshit. No one gatekeeps the gaming space. What people do is complain when their established franchises are twisting and mangling themselves to appeal to other people based off of ideological shit that does not belong in entertainment. Take She-Hulk, for example. That was a show where the writers decided to purposefully make a shitty show to quote-unquote troll the trolls. And then, when people complained about how terrible it was, the showrunner came out proudly stating how smart and intelligent she was because she had written the entire thing 3 years ago and was able to perfectly guess what the reaction to her shitty show would be. This is taken as a moment of pride and wittiness, but in reality, it's just someone invading the space of comics, taking a beloved character such as She-Hulk and ruining a show on purpose, just to go against the established fanbase. This is the same kind of dogshit attitude that we find ourselves with here in the gaming space. People taking over established franchises who have established fanbases and like what they like, and being told that they're wrong for liking it, and that now things will be done differently, and then when people react and get mad, or don't engage with the product and it flops, they are blamed for being toxic, gatekeeping gamers. This is just a single example of many in the entertainment industry, and if you think that this is irrelevant and not going to hit the gaming space, think again. It happened to comics years ago, it started hitting the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Disney, Star Wars, and just about anything that they touch really, just a couple of years ago, among other examples that we'll get into in just a second. And now, this stuff is visibly spreading and taking hold of the gaming space as well. In reality, companies with activists like Sweet Baby Inc. could just have their own original games in their own corners of the gaming space, flopping on their own if they sucked like Dustborn, or hey, who knows, maybe even finding a nice audience that makes it work in relation to the much smaller production budget that would go into these games, rather than taking as big a chance with diversifying the fan bases of expensive AAA games that can go up to hundreds of millions of dollars in budget. Why is it that Sweet Baby Inc. and other DEI-focused entities target these big studios and publishers instead of simply providing their consultation work on smaller studios? Well, shit, because you stand to gain a lot more traction, whether it be in your goals to take over the industry and the kind of content that gets made in it, or your goal to burn the industry to the ground by attaching yourself to AAA titans with huge franchises rather than smaller games from smaller studios that reach far less people. Take note of the language that they use and what they do. Their desire is not to carve their own spot to find their own communities within this massive and open gaming space of ours, with a wide variety of successful genres and franchises. Their goal isn't to share this space with us. Their desire is to inject themselves into other spaces, other communities, who they admittedly despise, and they do it all under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusivity, the three most bastardized words of current day. This is the shit that the Act Man refuses to acknowledge. He prefers instead to act as if he cares for moderate discussion of these matters, and then engage with morons like Andy Pants, whose arguments are about as strong as those that you get from a mute with no hands, or with dumbass lists like this from his video. where he bravely explores the arguments of the other side through a fucking retarded list that nobody cares or actually takes seriously, and then goes through it and constantly makes references to quote-unquote these people as he dismantles arguments that no one seriously makes. Hell, that list is so incredibly retarded that it contains games that not even Andy Pence himself, the patron saint of calling nearly everything woke and gay, would ever argue to be woke. And even if he did, it wouldn't matter, because it was irrelevant. Andy Pence is an example of the type of unhinged anti-woke content creator that is simply out here grifting at a literal level with a history of different channels and opinions. He doesn't think about these matters, he doesn't even care to have a mature discussion about it, he doesn't dive into why some of these games and shows are problematic, and he doesn't make a single delineation between examples of good diversity and examples of actual immersion-breaking ideological injections of propaganda. He puts on an act for his audience, he shapes his opinions for his audience, and in many ways he is a detriment to the real conversation around these matters, and in that regard, the Act-Man is not much better himself. It's incredibly easy to take apart stupid bullshit lists like those. I could do it too if I wanted to, but the fact is that nobody fucking cares about that. Take the shades off and get serious with me here for a second. There is no palpable narrative about Red Dead Redemption 2 being woke. There is no palpable narrative for Space Marines 2 being woke. And the same goes for many other games on that list. And even in the cases of Baldur's Gate 3, aside from a tiny minority who go hard as fuck on this, like Andy Pence and some other people who are lost in the sauce, there is still no palpable narrative around that game being woke either. The dominant speech surrounding Baldur's Gate 3 was nothing but positivity and praise for how to deliver a full experience, rich in content and detail for a fair price with no monetization bullshit. You want to make content making fun of that list and of people who say shit like that? Go right ahead, it's fun, but keep three things in mind first. Number one, don't disingenuously present it as the overall narrative, because it's not. Number two, don't attach it, relate it, attribute it, generalize it, whatever the fuck other word you want to use here, to everyone else who is having these discussions. And number three, don't brush this crap off as the same arguments out there that are actually worth discussing and listening to because of them having valid reasons for concern or valid shady shit attached to them, simply because you're not willing to take them seriously and engage with them. By doing these things as you did in your video, all you're doing is presenting yourself as a dumbass or as a fake, trying to draw people's attention away from actually important discourse by presenting them with retarded shit to point and laugh to and go, hey guys, look at this, this is so ridiculous, how could we ever take these people seriously? Oh my god, woke because a woman in it, woke because an improbable black guy in it, woke because there's a pride flag in a cosmetic menu, woke because you can't have a gay and bi relationship.
You see, it's not just what games they classify as woke, it's also the reasons and the recommendation. It's crazy that like that's all they need, like just this, like a pride flag in a game, even if it's an optional cosmetic. You can't even have that, like they don't even want that. You see how reductive these types of like woke labels become when they actually have to write down what's woke about it instead of just pointing at women and being like, women are woke. You know, it's like, it becomes very reductive and stupid. That's like, to these people, that's like a warning flag. You see how stupid, how fucking easy it is to just point out like minorities and women and say, look at the
research tier complete.
Games woke.
Tell us what to do.
That really is what it comes down to. It's like, okay, we want politics in games, just the right politics.
Commerce
just
upgrade
the right,
complete.
like Alex Jones, who's never had a bad opinion ever. And if they did this for racism and sexism, wouldn't that just be insane to be like, oh, this game is racist, a black guy gets killed in it? I feel like that would be the exact same shit.
I am the Unity servant.
Get these people.
What are you, fucking stupid?
Come on, dude, this is nothing. This is pissing in the rain. When you see an actual palpable narrative with a lot of people talking about it, the least you could do is put your ego away and explore it first, or at least try to figure out if there's something to be had there, instead of just sweeping it all under the same parasite political ideologue content creator run, which is so crazy ironic as well.
Tell us what
The actual irony of using those exact words, but only for a few fucking content creators, such as Melanie Mac, which is very likely who that tweet was for, given the timing between your tweets here, but not actually using them towards the people who are actually in a position of power and that can actually affect the outcome of our games. Hell, have already affected the outcome of our games, and our TV shows, our movies, our comics. Fuck, and that's just to leave it here and not get into the societal harm that they're posing as well. It's a pretty nuts thing to do, man.
A colonizable planet has been
And
discovered.
this is the core problem here. Unlike Candy and his audience's personal issues with you, it's not because you don't make videos or comments on woke stuff. You actually just did, after all. It's not because you don't talk about ugly characters. Hell, I even pointed out in my video that you did make comments about Concord characters being ugly. It's not because of any of this nonsense. All of this crap is pointless and superficial anyway. It's because you do actually make this content, and you do talk about this stuff, but you utterly and completely misrepresent the truth of the actual matters, whether that is because of not knowing about it, not agreeing with it, or not caring about it beyond putting on your own act towards your audience. It doesn't really matter. It's still wrong nonetheless. It's still totally missing the point, but worse than that, it's twisting and filtering it to hand feed some bullshit to your audience. And the reason why I even say it's bullshit is because of the fact that you supposedly did look up all of this stuff earlier this year. You looked up what Sweet Baby Inc. was when all of this shit blew out onto the public. You saw what it is that they and other consultant companies like theirs do, and you saw the reason why they do it. You saw that by hiring these DEI injecting consultants, companies get all sorts of very favorable monetary incentives, and you even admitted to finding it sickening. And even if you would flip your meaning at the time and say that it was simply because it ruined the narrative direction of Soy Squad, it still doesn't change the fact of what it is that these companies do, and it still doesn't change the fact that it is ideologically driven. You can't fix the problem until you acknowledge the entire problem and tackle it directly. You can't just complain of bad writing while pretending like the shit that caused that bad writing in the first place doesn't exist and we're all a bunch of lunatics whenever we call something out. Just like yourself, that is when I learned about it too. Up until earlier this year, I didn't know about any companies like Sweet Baby Inc. I didn't know about companies like BlackRock. I didn't believe any such agendas just because someone said so. Whenever I saw a bad piece of writing or a stupid narrative decision, I chalked it up to it just being that. And most of all, I never believed any company would purposefully shoot themselves in the foot by writing quote-unquote woke crap, a word that I don't even like using even now, because I much prefer describing exactly what a thing is, rather than just using an empty, meaningless word like woke, which have just become a speedrun route for people who want to ignore and dismiss everything that you're saying, to use as an excuse to, well, to ignore and dismiss everything that you're saying, especially the uncomfortable truths. Because what companies wanted most of all was money. They don't care about any of this LGBT stuff, for example. They'll proudly display their flags and celebrate pride in developed progressive Western countries while hiding it in the countries where it would actually help to show their support. Little did I know, however, about the ESG system, how it works, and how it granted them financial benefits. So I know that you're not just some dude who never heard about any of this and is just refusing to believe something that sounds like Dr. Doom nonsense. I've been there myself, I know how easy it is to dismiss it, but after that entry point that was Sweet Baby Inc., you should at the very least, have had the fucking conscious ability to see something and think twice before going off as if all of this shit was completely devoid of any validity at all. Honestly, even without the Sweet Baby Inc. situation, that is something that I would refrain from doing, especially considering my platform if it was as big as yours. I believe you do that because the information doesn't agree with you, and like some other morons who just lose their composure when someone is criticizing their piece of media, you lose yours, instead of inquiring, or at the very least not engaging on the off chance that they may have a point, since you really don't engage to begin with and just go straight to insults. It takes one hell of a splash of arrogance to assume that you have the only correct opinion about something, especially when it is something that you haven't looked into and lack information on, and that runs very deep. It's an ugly attitude, and it's once again on display here. Is Melanie Mac right? Is she wrong? I don't know, and I don't particularly care either, but she just expressed an opinion, and it isn't even an opinion that is solely hers. And most importantly, it isn't the only sign of concern for Halo Studios, considering their appointing of a DEI-focused chief of staff and of a guy who doesn't like guns as the producer of a first-person shooter. And before you drift off into, oh, woke because person cannot have political opinion or be able to work on something just because they don't like guns. Let me just stop you right there and say that you can totally not like guns and be an advocate for better gun control laws while also working on shooters. But by this guy's own admittance, he can separate the two. He says he straight up could never work on stuff like COD or Battlefield because of the more realistic setting, and that in Halo he struggles, but gets by because of the sci-fi setting allowing for a better separation of reality and fiction. But if you struggle, even with just the concept of guns and shooting in a completely fictional setting, doesn't matter if it's Call of Duty or a fucking AK-47 mod in Lord of the Rings, you should not be working on shooters. Your head is just not in it. If you can't find guns cool in a fictional concept and find the value in making impactful mechanics to refine that FPS feel, then you have two big issues standing in the way of providing the best shooter experience for your players. But let's get back to the Act Man. I've seen this spicy attitude before. You have gone down this road before and you ended up looking like an idiot. When Az's Starfield rant popped up, you completely lost your composure. You didn't bother to check for context, you didn't bother to inquire about any single thing, and you didn't bother to just let it be and mind your business. Instead, you made your assumptions and attacked him, no holds barred. Gorilla shaped the man on the verge of crying because Starfield lets you pick pronouns at the start of the game, and then it's never brought up again. Somebody please shoot this guy. With a bear tranquilizer, he's going to attack someone. And then when someone tried to simmer you down by telling you he's great, just a passionate person speaking his mind like many other creators out there, you retorted that he's great at making people that criticize pronoun use look like a bunch of shit-eating cavemen. I'd love to see pronouns in every game moving forward for no other reason than spite and to watch this guy's world melt. Those were your words on the matter. Fuck the consequences, fuck the context, and especially fuck the fact that he was absolutely right on everything he said. Don't get me wrong, when I heard his rant, I knew none of these things, and I didn't bother to look them up either. But unlike you, I didn't retweet and insult him, I didn't talk shit about him online, I didn't make videos, and I didn't throw hate his way. In my mind, I was more interested in how the rest of the game was, and so I didn't care. Little did I know that that rant was actually several hours into his playthrough, and not even about the actual pronoun button. How ironic it was to see you months later discovering Sweet Baby Inc. and finding what they do to be sickening, when just a few months ago you were in love with the prospect of having that kind of ideological shit pumped into every game just out of spite. And how pathetic it was to see you playing victim when called out on it afterwards, acting like you had important receipts about the situation, when in reality the only receipts you had were only further proof of this attitude of yours, of not giving a shit about this matter, to the point where you couldn't even delay a video featuring him and his rant, with a complete lack of context, information or consideration from your part, or at least cut a part of it out to be able to have an actual discussion with the man a few days later. Although I guess I can say that I don't understand your selfish position. After all, the majority of that video was all about further shitting and shaming the man that you supposedly wanted to hash things out with, and speaking on the matter as if you actually knew what the fuck you're talking about, even though you just admitted in your DMs to be lacking context. A few days ago, when Andy Pants released his incredibly stupid video about how everything is gay and retarded, you said that it seemed as if he hadn't learned his lesson. It seems that you haven't learned yours either, which isn't even implying that some way, somehow, Melanie's tweet about the chief looking feminine is going to become the Nostradamus moment of 2024, where next year it is revealed that John is now Joanne or some shit. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying, though, is that you carry on with the same attitude that got you looking like a clown last year, or rather, earlier this year, and that carries on making you look like a clown every time that you tackle this topic and completely miss the point, misrepresent the facts, and choose to continue ignoring actual, worthwhile and complicated situations. while instead choosing to argue against delusional hypotheticals that are not representative of anything of value that is even relatable to the real concerns in the minds of the people who initiate these back and forths online, that often turn into toxic battlegrounds because of people who do the exact same thing that you do in your video and in your tweets, which is to assume that they're just a bunch of drooling morons, that suddenly, after decades of diversity in video games, of gay and bi romance options, of kick-ass female protagonists, some way, somehow, these fucking people woke up bigoted, racist, phobic, and sexist. Like alt-right sleeper agents. Sure, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You see these discussions online and you end up misrepresenting the situation and generalizing everyone who uses certain words like woke or makes certain arguments in regards to DEI or anything else that you disagree with or that you don't approve of as digestible as fucking morons, retards, or in Az's case, shit-eating cavemen. And then you move on with your day, asserting the unhinged takes from some members of your fanbase and further forming your view of these matters from inside of that echo chamber, like the non-existence of a single anti-woke complaint that matters, or of Melanie Mac being a fake gamer who doesn't even play video games, when even someone like me, who doesn't know her or her content, was able to quickly find that she literally plays video games on fucking streams. You put up a facade that you are open to discussions, but your actual intentions are cloudy as fuck, to say the best. Because your demeanor has not changed at all. Even after being exposed to the doorway to all this crap with Sweet Baby Inc., your demeanor has not changed. You haven't bothered correcting past statements, nor see the landscape through a new lens that refrains from demonizing people you disagree with. You are incapable of at least trying to understand the place that a person is coming from, incapable of doing a little computing in your mind to try and see that, okay, I think I can see what might be a concern to them, especially when this stuff has a track record of failure, and then incapable of trying to engage with them to change their mind if that would be your desire to do so. At the very least, I don't know, man, just own it. Don't put up the facade that you're willing to have a moderate discussion with people who think differently, when in actuality, you just blow up at them online. Don't start a video where you're going over some retarded woke list by saying that it's no secret that companies are sometimes pushing agendas in media, pop culture, and video games, and then leaving it at that, not elaborating on a single instance of it, and proceeding to make the entire rest of the video about how ridiculous these supposed people are.
Look, okay, it's no secret that companies are sometimes pushing agendas in media, pop culture, video games, and whatnot. Bloons Tower Defense 6 is woke now, fellas. It's been compromised. It contains overtly pro-LGBTQ+ messaging.
It's a person. I don't know what fucking guy made this list either, but this isn't a people. This isn't these people that you're trying to paint all of us to yourself and to your audience with a broad-ass brush as a representation of those damn political ideologue parasites online. It's very lovely to drop a, hey guys, I know that there's sometimes this and that, just to perish the thought that you're as deep inside of a fucked up bubble as the guy who made that list. That useless little statement serves only to give yourself an out, to give yourself some wiggle room, and to paint yourself as a person who is actually in the know about all of these matters. And so, when you say that someone is a shit-eating caveman or a retard, that's because they are, because you are the act man, and you know what you're talking about, even though you never talk about it at all. You flap around on the surface, pretending like you do, by replying to moronic shit like that woke list, or by talking to Andy Pants, or shitting on people on Twitter. Your constant inability to actually engage with this topic, your complete dissonance, using political ideologues who masquerade as gaming content creators, invading our gaming space, without a single acknowledgement or condemnation of the ones in the actual positions of power, influence, and literal fucking control over the games in our gaming space, shows where your intentions are. This thing that you claim to hate so much, this toxic environment of turning game discourse political through ideologues and whatever else, if this thing is a problem for you, then they, the people in charge of these companies, in control of these franchises, are the perpetrators of the original sin. You're turning your shitty blame the wrong way. It is because of them that this toxic climate has established itself in the entertainment discourse. It is because of them pushing and pushing and pushing, never knowing when to stop, that the bubble has burst. People are unable to ignore it anymore. People are unable to tolerate it any longer, unable to pretend like it's all fine, and unable to keep quiet about it because of fear of backlash from morons who just label them as bigots for daring to have an opinion. And now the stage is set for all that follows, including unhinged extremists on both sides, using it to boost their voices, including people like Andy wanting to profit from it. And of course, content creators and influencers who are passionate about this shit, and in some cases, like Az, who already knew about all of this shit before the bubble burst in the first place. People like Melanie expressing an opinion that triggers the fuck out of you, and people like myself, sick of seeing the same reductive, misrepresentative shit being spouted by people like yourself and people in the media. You think the average fucking person wants the video game discourse to devolve into this? You think the average person likes to find their gaming pages and communities totally dominated by toxic political shit? You think that this shit just popped up on its own, solely by the hands of people? Are you insane?
Some people are really fucking stupid.
The unities will be done.
Did you ever notice that? How many really stupid people you run into during the day? You'll be listening to some guy.
What's up, everybody? This is the woke man here.
This guy is fucking stupid.
Cut the act, just be yourself. At least it's more respectable and you can stop hypocritically presenting yourself to your audience as this factual voice of reason who is solely invested in the truth and who doesn't choose a side in a sea of grifters and parasites who just pretend to care while invading your space with political agendas that are totally not there already in full force on crystal clear display through several studios and publishers in the AAA space, further adhering into the same DEI bullshit that has been killing Disney franchises. We have a clear window with the view as to where this shit is leading us to. Flop after flop after flop through MCU Phase 4, Disney Star Wars, Doctor Who, and even individual stuff like Indiana Jones. And it's more than present outside of Disney too. Robin Hood, Cleopatra, She Said, Velma, Bros, Rings of Power, etc. Not all because of the quote-unquote woke. Again, I hate the word and I prefer to just identify the problems on their own. However, there are many ideological facets that influence not just the content, but sometimes the stuff itself, by appointing directors, writers, and actors, by handling gigs based off of ideological motives, rather than the simple, good old-fashioned, foolproof plan of being the right person for the job. It's been happening in force over there first, and it's absolutely the direction that the games industry is headed into. Except, unlike Disney, with their trillions of dollars and their ties to shit like BlackRock, the games industry is not going to be left just as unscathed. Video games take too much money, time, and effort to produce. A single flop can be catastrophic, especially with the insane amount of money that these studios are blowing away on these projects these days, costing multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. Spider-Man 2 being an egregious example of $315 million for a game you can fully complete in 23 hours. 2024 was a year of several project cancellations, many layoffs, and even some studio shutdowns. BlackRock and governmental funding for DEI-fueled trash like Dustborn is not going to be enough to make up for the possible flops in the horizon from an industry that is increasingly investing into its bullshit and treating their consumers like trash, falling into the same disgusting, arrogant attitude that awashed Hollywood as they constantly attack their fan bases and refuse to make content for them, and then call them outright for criticizing it when it sucks, completely forgetting who it was in the first place that made all of these pieces of media successful. Their own fan bases, the ones who went out and got tickets to watch movies, or who tuned in to watch their shows, or pre-ordered their games, or who clocked out on a Friday, ran to the game store on their way home just to get the latest game and binge it all weekend long. They're forgetting who made them successful and pandering to such an insane minority of people, of whom several of them don't even give a shit about these pieces of media to begin with. The fact that none of this is enough of a motivation or a reason for you to speak so passionately and so irately against, but some random girl saying that the Master Chief looks like a chick is just fucking amazing to me. In closing, I leave you with this message. I hope you take it to heart.
Fuck you and fucking Facebook. Fuck you and social media. It's all about you, you dumb motherfucker. Get up, grab your balls, hug your wife, kiss the kid, pick up the fucking dog. Stop it. Stop it. It's not all Obama's fault. You don't want Ebola? Take your vitamin C, you dumb motherfucker. You don't want ISIS to fuck with you? Stay in New Jersey.
You don't want ideologues fucking with your entertainment medium and bringing unhinged politics into the space, then call the actual shit out.
But stop your fucking crying. You're a fucking American, you fucking douchebag. Start acting like it.
But anyway, that's all I had to say. If you liked the video, please show the like button some love down there. And if you have any thoughts or feedback, let me know in the comments. If you're an Eggman fan and you hated it, well, I mean, you're probably not even listening this far into it anyway, but hey, I welcome any discourse. Just try and be respectful, because I didn't come in your house and shit on your carpet, now did I? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Defilers encroach upon us. Control group created.
We're uncertain of our next move. Phase jump underway. Is this the path to vengeance? Is the Unity with us? Unity, guide my hand to safety.
Is it time?
As you wish.
Is it time? Moving into phase space.
Hey everybody, the recently released previews of Dragon Age Veilguard have once again sparked a bit of controversy, with a lot of back and forth going on social media in regards to the character creator, including the gender of non-binary with they/them pronouns, double mastectomy scars, otherwise known as top surgery scars, and a few other things like, for example, vitiligo and cellulite. I want to talk a bit about this topic and present the reason why I believe it is actually so much more important than what loads of people are trying to pass on as something that doesn't really matter. Because the number one argument that I can find online in regards to this is usually something along the lines of, why does it matter to you? Just ignore it. It's just an option. No one is forcing you to use it. Why do you care that much? It's not about you. And other similar comments that at a surface level kind of do not sound wrong, but are missing the entire fucking point. So I'd like to line up a few things that I'll be trying to tackle here. Number one, why it actually does matter, far beyond the simple concept of optional top surgery scars. Number two, why the inclusion of it matters to the people who support it and exactly why they support it. Number three, the reason why these ideologies screw up game development. Number four, the reason why this is actually indeed ideological and not really genuine without any inclusion or anything of the sort. So yeah, let's get cooking. So, the reason why it matters is because it goes far beyond the simple addition of a scar or a they/them pronoun to a video game character creator. At its surface level, these are just options that anyone can turn off. But something you definitely cannot turn off is the actual ideology behind it, and it is an ideology. Notice, for example, that these scars aren't even put into the scar section of the character creator, next to the other scars, but are actually in a separate section under the specific name of top surgery scars. More on this later. Matters like non-binary genders are a very hotly contested topic in Western politics, and transsexuality is even more so, specifically the transition of children. More on this on topic number 4. Basically, on that surface level, it's very easy to say that it doesn't matter and justify its inclusion as just a nice thing for those who do care and who want to feel seen and represented, that it doesn't bother or harm anyone else nor impact anything else. But I argue that this is wrong and is actually the same kind of nice, tolerant, easygoing mentality that got us exactly where we are now, culminating in the apex of shit content that are games like Dustborn and Concord, stories and writing present in Soy Squad, missed opportunities for a character created in Star Wars Outlaws that could have still easily been included alongside with Humberly Gonzalez as the default character for those who wanted to play as a set character, like for example in Mass Effect. And of course, let's not forget like fucking half, if not more, of the entire Disney Plus catalog, especially trash like the MCU Phase 4 and Disney Star Wars. This latest one, The Acolyte, was so terrible that it had the Season 2 cancelled in less than 2 months. And this is because this kind of mentality is a slippery slope that eventually leads into replacing actually passionate creatives who just want to make good media with obsessed activists who just want to cram their messages into entertainment with a wide reach. The Acolyte, for example, at its surface was just a show, but it actually was so much more than that. It was an extremely important symbol for far-left ideologues in the creative space and their modern audience, otherwise known as woked-out people. Oh, and also let's not forget how important it was for entertainment media / excess media journalists that are just as bad, if not worse, than gaming journalists. Which is why when the show's viewership was dwindling and it was getting roasted online, these showrunners, actors, journalists, and fans ran to the defense of the show, telling the fandom how sexist, racist, and whatever phobic they were for not liking it, and that they don't matter anymore and shouldn't even be watching the show to begin with. And when it ultimately got its season 2 cancelled, there was a massive outcry against both the critics of the shows as well as even Disney itself. Ah man, it was beautiful. So many unhinged soy people tweeting in all caps telling Disney to go fuck themselves. Finally, for once, the Star Wars fandom was unified in at least one thing, even if not for the same reasons. And of course, we must not forget the success of this show was indeed so ideologically important that a smear and cancellation campaign was launched against several big content creators who criticized the show, an actually coordinated attack with the goal of getting YouTube to remove or at least demonetize these people, calling their criticism of the show as hatred and vitriol. So if this is just a nice little inclusive thing that doesn't really matter and impact anything else, and it's just a nice little addition for people misrepresented in the media, then what the hell was all this about? So supporting this, or just kind of letting it happen under the guise of innocent inclusivity, is a proven slippery slope that results in radical ideologues abusing people's good nature to start slowly overtaking more and more of media production, injecting more and more radical ideologies into media and using quote-unquote marginalized minorities as both a shield and a sword, and also wielding their own version of a nuclear deterrent, which was the ever-powerful cancel culture. Cancel culture has been dwindling over the last couple of years, which has been a delight to see. It's proof that our society is starting to heal, but not that long ago, it was so powerful that finding one single tweet of yours from 12 fucking years ago that could be considered insensitive in current day was enough to get you to lose your job. They even liked using hashtags like cancel party after the name of the person or thing that the mobs were canceling. Another avid user of the cancel culture mobs of social media is Kim Belair, CEO of Sweet Baby Inc., who has openly admitted and suggested using intimidation on studios and publishers to get her shitty fucking company hired as DEI consultants. They despise gamers, they hate the gaming space, and they've made it clear that their goal is not diversity and inclusion, but an actual eventual takeover and replacement of the kind of content that gets made, which will never really happen, because even if she did manage to expand that much, all these games would be flopping and they would be out of money. You see, it's very easy to talk the talk when it's not your own money that is up on the table when it comes to a game's success. Sweet Baby Inc. comes in, charges millions for their consulting services, fucks up stories, characters, world building, etc., or a combination of all these things, and then they fuck off and don't care if the game flops or not. Their mission of fucking up a game with ideology is already completed. They don't have to be successful to get hired, all they have to do is say this.
The unities will be done.
Which I did for many, many years. Put this stuff up to your higher-ups. And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't get what you want.
And the reason why they hold so much power, the reason why they have so much access, that they manage to work on huge projects like Spider-Man, God of War, Alan Wake, and Soy Squad, as well as the reason why they are so protected, that they can be this divisive, incompetent, useless, and inflammatory towards the gaming space without a single inkling of consequence, is because they've managed to latch themselves onto this industry and feed off of it like a parasite, under the guise of progressivism and diversity and inclusion. Again, the replacement of passionate creatives who want to make good games with unhinged, out-of-touch activists who want to force their ideologies on everyone and everything around them and not take no for an answer. They're also working on other stuff too, by the way. It's not just the games that I mentioned. They work for various huge publishers and studios, and despite the backlash all year long, they are still working on unannounced Square Enix, Insomniac, Insomniac and Ubisoft titles. It's just that they've taken to hiding their work from their website. And let's not forget the shady shit that they just got caught doing for Ubisoft and the New York Times, literally fabricating lies to be presented as news to defend Ubisoft in regards to AC Shadow's drama regarding Yasuke. Another way that this slippery slope works is the reason why games like Black Myth Wukong, Space Marines 2 and Stellar Blade are targets for the game's media because of not adhering to obvious political agendas. That's sadly the key point here. It's that we've gone so far into lunacy that a simple game like Black Myth Wukong, a pure action-focused game set in Chinese mythology with no gender, sex or racial-focused themes in its fantasy setting and story, can get attacked relentlessly for denying Sweet Baby Inc. and not including diversity and inclusion, aka DEI policies, in the game. So in other words, you have no creative freedom to simply make a game that does not want to meddle in real-life politics. Or rather, you do have the freedom to do that, but you run the risk of getting the side-eye from the media or potentially even getting attacked with a fabricated smear campaign that interprets your neutrality and loyalty to the art as an alt-right decision. Similarly, every game from now on that features a character creator will be scrutinized and called transphobic or deliberately exclusive to marginalized communities and misrepresented groups if they don't include non-binary genders, they-them pronouns, and double mastectomy scars in their character creators. The games industry will now look to Veilguard as a precedent for something that should be present in all games, and they will use the precise argument that they use for Wukong and that people use in comment sections defending Veilguard, that it's just diversity and inclusion, and not doing it, even in settings where it clearly doesn't make any sense, is appealing to problematic, toxic right-wing fan bases. So, if top surgery scars are only going to be appealing to a minuscule minority of people that can't even fill the entire trans demographic, which is already a minority in and of itself, more on this later, then why do we see so many comments defending this, coming from normal people who have no stake in it? Well, it's because it's the perceivably good thing to do. They see the scars as an inclusive addition for transsexual people, especially trans men who would have to undergo double mastectomies to remove their breasts. At least that's the look of it. To people who are on the outside looking in, who are not up to par with what BlackRock is, to what it is that DEI departments and DEI policies really do, the way that they actually operate, the depths of this regressive ideology that refuses to see people as individuals and judges and discriminates us all based on our innate, unchangeable characteristics such as race, gender and sexuality, to people who don't actually know what companies like Sweet Baby Inc. actually do, how they operate, how they force themselves into studios and publishers with intimidation, how they hate and discriminate against gamers, how they lie to the public and fabricate shit in news media, like how they were just caught doing right now, like I mentioned, the way that consultant companies and DEI departments like it exist solely for corporations to increase their ESG scores and land better business deals with investors like BlackRock and Vanguard, the fact that none of this is even genuine and real, more on this in a little bit, like to them, unbeknownst of all of this stuff, or willingly ignoring it, there are really only two ways to view this situation. The good way, which is to support it because it's being inclusive of people with mastectomy scars, and that's good because they're marginalized and underrepresented in media and etc, 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 and the bad way, which is to be against it, which looks like bigoted, discriminatory, anti-trans rhetoric. When you lack deeper context into why this bothers people and is unquestionably ideological, which goes into far deeper and uncomfortable matters, some of which are political, such as the whole child transitioning thing that I'll try to sum up in a bit on topic number 4, and other matters which are not political at all, such as not wanting entertainment media like film, TV shows, games, etc. to be used as a tool for political and ideological propaganda. When you lack all of this information, you just look at everything at a surface level, black versus white, and so those are the only two narratives that they see. That's why speaking against this is always very taboo and can result in negative interactions online, because these matters require actual discussions. It requires maturity, it requires a willingness to let go of our biases, a willingness to be uncomfortable, and most importantly, a willingness to listen to people who we have been taught to hate. I'm gonna try to keep this section short because I already covered this extensively in my DEI video. This topic is meant to be as apolitical as possible. Basically, what I mean when I say injection of ideologies, I am specifically talking about real-life political statements and messages that are forced into lore, world-building, story, characters, environments, or game design, or a mix of all of these. They don't have to be literal statements and messages. Sometimes a simple scene with a character asking the other character what their pronouns are in a fucking world in a galaxy far, far away in the future, or in a medieval fantasy world completely devoid of 21st century is enough to break the fourth wall just to make sure that you're eating your gender studies vegetables today. Nothing that breaks immersion is good. But further than that, with political ideology, not only are you breaking that immersion, but you're also dividing your audience. And in fact, further than that, with extreme political ideology, not only are you breaking immersion and dividing your audience, but you are also directly excluding entire chunks of your audience who will be put off from even buying your product. If Veilguard's top surgery scars were simply a tiny little addition to be inclusive of trans people, which again doesn't even really work, we'll get to it in topic 4, just bear with me here. And if it wasn't 2024, the year where so many people have finally hit their limit with this relentless force-feeding of ideological bullshit, then you could actually maybe kind of get away with it. Last year, when I saw pronouns in the character creator of Starfield, I didn't even flinch that much. I noticed it, I rolled my eyes a bit, and then I kept playing hoping that the rest of the game hadn't been too impacted by it. Though we already know what happened there. But sadly, in Veilguard, they are an ideological injection being shoved into a world where it doesn't even make sense for them to be there. A world of magic, ancient ways of life, and medieval bullshit, not doctors and surgeons. Sometimes I see the argument that, for example, the reason a game like Concord and Dustborn fails, or the reason why the Acolyte also failed, is because of the content within the product, and not because of politics. While it is true that the content is the most important part, and that bad writing, bad character design, bad acting, and bad stories are straight up solid and palpable reasons as to why these pieces of media failed, doesn't mean that politics didn't actually impact them. Because political nonsense is what often influences these terrible decisions to be made in the first place. When you approach a creative project and you make it your main goal, or one of your main goals, to focus on injecting your personal baggage, preachy messaging, and political ideology into several aspects of your product, you are automatically making the decision to not put your focus onto the things that matter the most for the product to succeed in the world of fiction, be it shows or games. If you're going to make a comedy movie, for example, and being funny is not your top priority, then you fucked up. When you put your ego above your responsibility to your consumers, to your fans, you are automatically putting yourself on the path to make bad decisions. Now, understandably, Corinne Bush, the director of Dragon Age Veilguard, probably doesn't even feel much of a responsibility to any fans because she wasn't even a developer in the Dragon Age series. She was a developer on The Sims. The Sims. Now, why the fuck would BioWare or EA put the director of Sims games as the director of an incredibly important make-or-break game for BioWare after the disgraceful failures of Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, and after the studio got basically stripped down to its bones in terms of veteran developers who write all of these series that we love? Well, I don't know. Higher-ups at gaming companies make some of the most stupefying decisions I've ever seen, but when I look at the developer diary on Corinne, I immediately feel that this game's chances are fucked, because she is putting ideology not only in front of Veilguard, but at the very forefront of her thoughts when it comes to what Dragon Age represents as a whole. Let's read her developer diary on the thing that matters the most for this matter here, which is the game itself. The Dragon Age franchise has a very special place in Corinne's heart. In Dragon Age, you can be who you want to be, explore the possibilities and consequences of your choices, and build relationships that leave lasting impressions. Few games give players that kind of autonomy while also weaving such a rich narrative. As a queer trans woman, I have a perspective on the games that not everyone has. Dragon Age has long been a place where LGBTQIA+ folks can see people like themselves represented respectfully. It's inherently very queer, and it's such a rare thing for marginalized communities to have representation where we feel proud and powerful in how we are depicted. It's so deeply meaningful for so many. I often get emotional when I think about what it would have meant for a younger version of myself to see someone like her, and as a hero no less. I hope we can be a safe place for our queer players to know they are not alone, that they are brilliant and worthy, and that they are not only welcome but celebrated. The tiny top paragraph is the only thing she says about Dragon Age as a game series that can even be remotely related to Dragon Age as a game series. Be who you want to be, you know, sort of. You're a preset person, you can simply customize them and then you can choose whether to be a good version of that or a bad version of that. But the rest is alright though. Possibilities, consequences, relationships, rich narratives. This is still missing a shit ton of stuff, but maybe she goes into it on the last bigger paragraph, I thought. But she doesn't. Instead, she goes into identity politics and other sort of rhetoric that doesn't really actually matter to the game, or even to the vast majority of the players of the game, as she herself admits by saying that as a queer trans woman, she has a perspective on the games that not everyone has, and she decided that she would use her personal, inconceivable perspective to the vast majority of the player base in order to visualize what this franchise should be about. When I think of Corinne and other trans people, I genuinely view them as people. I don't view them as trans people. I don't care about the fact that she transitioned. I only care about the content of the character, and this goes for everyone else in the world. Specifically, as a game director, I care about her creative capacity, her competence, and since it's a big project, her resume. And so when I hear nonsense about marginalized communities and being able to see themselves and being celebrated, I roll my eyes pretty violently because the vast majority of these people are marginalizing themselves. Society as a whole does not see them as different unless they make themselves different. Corinne, in my eyes, passes perfectly, at least insofar as her photo in the diary goes. If I was out buying groceries, for example, and she was standing in line or whatever, I wouldn't notice anything unusual about her, just another typical woman shopping.
Vengeance shall be ours. Your suffering begins now. Vengeance shall be ours.
So basically, if she didn't make her transness such an important part of her personal identity and lifestyle, like the majority of trans people do not, because they just want to alleviate their dysphoria and blend into society and move on with their lives, then we wouldn't even really know that she's trans. If BioWare wasn't trying to tell the world that they have a trans director directing the next major installment of their major franchise so that they can score some more ESG points for EA, the world would not know or care about it. She would probably still be judged, of course, because of the perceivably stupid decision of putting the director of Sims games ahead of a massive RPG, but we wouldn't know or care about anything else. And this seems to be a trend with certain people within the TOS LGBTQIA+++ community. So many of these people do not suffer from any dysphoria. They just choose to perceive and present themselves as marginalized. They choose to victimize and oppress themselves by painting and interpreting the world around them and everything in it, such as entertainment, education, government, workplace, etc., as their enemy, simply because the vast majority of the world around them is not conforming to the delusions that some of these people created for themselves, such as the 72 genders within the non-binary umbrella, which has actually evolved far past 72 by now. They kind of end up creating a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where they marginalize themselves out of choice and stay marginalized by choice. When I say marginalized, I say it in quotations, because basically you aren't marginalized just because you expect ridiculous levels of special treatment from people in reality itself. If I walk into a job interview with a sticker on my chest saying, "Hi, my pronouns are Zimzer," and I start naming dumbass labels like, "I'm a two-spirit bingo bango bongo gender with a history of trauma and PTSD from living in a white supremacist patriarchal society, and then I demand they hire me because if they don't, they're part of the problem," that doesn't actually make me marginalized. It just makes me an idiot. Because I'm making my life harder for myself when I could just shut the fuck up, put away my made-up pronouns permanently, tell them my name, answer their questions, hand in my resume, shake their hand, and leave. But in the cases of trans people, real trans people I mean, I do acknowledge that it is way different. Real trans people, so people who actually have dysphoria and transition, do go through actual struggles in their lives. But A lot of those struggles are mostly personal struggles. Gender dysphoria, having to fund their own transitions, having to fund their surgeries, undergoing these surgeries and their risks, getting pain from those surgeries, etc. Which are problems that will not be fixed by pumping media with ideological bullshit. In fact, they make it worse. This ideology thinks that they're helping trans people by meddling with matters like child transitioning, enforcement of language, inclusion in female sports, pandering to non-binary people, and of course, shoving ideological messaging into the general population's favorite mediums of entertainment. But they're not. They're just making normal and real trans people look bad and suffer consequences for shit that they don't even support themselves. Corrine made it pretty evident which type of person she is, as well as her misinterpretation of what is important in the franchise, and her intentions and directions for the future of her games, which is to see herself to be a space for queer players, to cater to them, to make them feel brilliant and worthy, and not only include them, but specifically pander to them and celebrate them, whatever the fuck that even means. I mean, I guess we know what it means. It means top surgery scar buttons in the character creator and the fictional world that won't be fictional at all. It'll just be modern day Californian shit mixed with magic, elves and dragons. It honestly doesn't inspire much confidence. It wasn't enough for Starfield, and Starfield wasn't even that charged with this stuff. So I don't know if it'll be enough for Veilguard. As a director, your main focus should be the quality of your game and what you can bring to the table in matters of lore, in the quality of memorable characters, in where you're going to take the story, what type of gameplay direction you're going to go, etc. Not identity politics and the desire to pander to the 1%. So the entire last section in regards to Corrine's statements on the developer diary are already a major piece of evidence as to why this is actually ideological and not a genuine desire of creating what you want to create. This is what they say when they describe the inclusion of all of these options, that it's all about making a character creator with so many options that you can create whatever you want, however you want, and be inclusive of as many types of people as possible. But it's not true. But before I elaborate on that, let me mention again how in this character creator, the top surgery scars are specifically specified as top surgery scars in their own section. A clean and clear way to demonstrate to your audience that you're not pulling some far left ideological grift with your video game would be to actually put these scars next to all the other scars in the scar section. Try to say that 3 times fast. But they want to make it as clear as possible that these are scars from a character undergoing double mastectomy surgery, which again means the removal of their breasts. As mentioned before on topic number 2, this is a hot topic in politics, and for good reason, because it's a matter that involves not just minors, but straight up children. Child transition is a massive battleground that runs very, very hot. Now I know most gamers, probably being teenagers and young adults, don't have a personal stake in the matter, and this results in that huge imbalance online where you see someone who cares a lot getting into heated interactions with someone who doesn't even know what the fuck is going on, and thinks the inclusion of top surgery scars is just a nice thing for trans people, and anyone against it could only be a transphobe. Meanwhile, under the surface are debates on whether or not doctors should be prescribing dangerous drugs like puberty blockers to start transitioning children, who absolutely cannot consent to any of this, by the way, and also performing double mastectomies on young girls who are also absolutely unable to consent to either. They can't even consent to tattoos. Hell, they aren't even of age to vote for these matters. If you're not old enough to vote on whether or not children should be allowed to transition or get mastectomies, then how can you be old enough to fully comprehend and consent to your own transition or mastectomy? When you add serious real-life political issues into your game, you have to understand that this is going to carry a lot of weight and potential consequences, because you are essentially taking a stance. When it's pertaining to a matter this huge, well, it's normal for people to take issue. Even though the depicted characters are adults, this is still attached to the same ideology that is directly associated to that stance. Anyway, carrying on here, another indicator of ideological bullshit is the fact that you actually can't create whatever type of character you want. Perfectly visible in how the body sliders are drastically limiting hip width, glute size and chest size, otherwise known as curves, asses and boobs. So if you want to create an elf or whatever that looks like Tifa Lockhart, you can't do it. Hell, if you're one of the many female gamers who play Dragon Age games and you want to create a character that makes you feel seen with your own body proportions, you very likely won't be able to do it, because their ideology is one that is very inconsiderate moderate and straight up sexist to actual women. Anything that goes too far beyond a passable androgynous body is a big no-no. This is the same ideology that attacked Stellar Blade for featuring an unapologetically good-looking woman with clear feminine features. The same kind of ideology that gets people brainwashed into thinking that characters like Eve in her many outfits and Tifa in her swimsuit are directly harmful to quote-unquote female identifying persons by perpetuating unrealistic body and beauty standards that exist solely to appeal to the male gaze. I'm working on a video on the side specifically talking about this, so I'm going to leave this here, but I'll just add that I think that this is an insane thing that is happening to women, specifically female gamers. They're straight up demonizing women who have more prominent feminine features, telling them that they're wrong for having the bodies that they have and that they exist solely to perpetuate a patriarchal society. Basically, as with the usual rules of this ideological bullshit, they welcome everyone of all shapes, sizes, backgrounds, and opinions, so long as those shapes, sizes, backgrounds, and opinions are exactly the same as their own. If not, then they are intolerable and must be eliminated from society. Lastly, the actual trans side of the problem. The reason why I say that these scars are only there to appeal to a minuscule minority of a minority is because in reality most LGBT people don't even care about this. This is partly why I find this kind of disingenuous pandering so distasteful. None of it is genuine or even thought out. It's just shoved in there to tick boxes. The LGBT community is already a minority when it comes to numbers, and within this minority there's another divide between them. There's the ones who want to be perceived, treated, and given special treatment as marginalized victims in already progressive Western societies, people who make their genders their entire identity and personality, whose hobbies consist of being terminally online on Twitter and TikTok, looking for things to get offended at or opportunities to make things about themselves. And then there's the totally normal gay, lesbian, bisexual, and trans people who put on their pants in the morning one leg at a time just like everyone else, who are just living their lives and keeping what they have in their pants or what they do in their bedrooms as their own private business. They don't need your pandering or your voice to validate and speak for them. Gender dysphoria can be an absolutely crippling mental condition. There are no cures or treatments for this kind of disorder, and the only way to alleviate and cope with it is to transition and live life as a person of the other gender. The better you can pass, the less dysphoria you will feel, and of course the better you can blend into society and have the freedom to live a normal life regardless of what type of personality you have. Naturally, a top surgery scar can be a thing that triggers their dysphoria. A lot of trans men even end up covering up their top surgery scars with tattoos once they've healed up. So it's just like, who is this even for? Is it for virtue signalers who, similarly to Ubisoft, were thinking, oh hey, our protagonist in feudal Japan is black, so let's just put hip-hop music in the combat. I mean, that's what black people like, right? They like hip-hop. So Veilguard was thinking about the easiest, laziest, and most condescending way to represent trans people by shoving in double mastectomy scars without even thinking about how inappropriate that is to someone who actually had to get the surgery. This, and the fact that body shapes and sizes for female bodies are specifically limited in the exact same way that these ideologies push through DEI consultants and DEI departments across the board, are a clear indication that this is all ideological. It's not inclusion, it's not body diversity, it's not body positivity, it's not tolerance, it's not kindness, and it's not creating safe and fun spaces for everyone. It's about the message. You can see here what I was just talking about, by the way. It's a directive sent by Microsoft to their own game studios back when these parasites were all attacking Stellar Blade for daring to feature women who look like women.
Thank you for...
Gross.
Logistics are complete.
So yeah, these are the reasons why I believe that this is not just a little additional option that doesn't matter and that doesn't impact anything else. I don't really care if you buy the game or not. I'm not running a boycott here, nor do I even have the power to do so with 380 subscribers. I have no idea how the full game will turn out. Gameplay itself doesn't look terrible, but all of these ideological injections and influences make this look like it will be a shadow of its former self when it comes to what made Dragon Age a great game with interesting characters, in-universe political political intrigue, and above all, an integrity to telling a good story, free of real-life propaganda. I am simply tired of hearing those comments saying that it's fine and that it doesn't matter and that it's just an option and that I should not care. We've been through this before and it resulted in the agenda that we have now, poisoning our media. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of condoning it, I'm sick of ignoring it, I'm sick of forcing myself to be tolerant of things that are clearly going over the line and becoming discriminative of people, destructive of media, and regressive to society. That's pretty much it from me on this topic though. Thank you very much for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked the video. I'll see you on the next one.
Logistics upgrade complete. We must act. Vengeance shall be ours. Harmony research complete. Vengeance shall be ours. Shield down! Your suffering begins now. Our armor is breached.
Hey everybody. Today we have to talk about Ubisoft and their CEO, Yves Guillemot. We're just going to refer to him going forward as Yves.
Created. Civilian structure complete.
French?
Vengeance shall be
Can you read
ours.
French?
On September 25th, an internal memo from Yves to the company leaked onto us, the public. In it, he talks directly to his staff on the goings-on, and let me tell you, it isn't good. His internal statements to his own employees are not facing the actual facts and reality. It's like he's doing PR speak to his own people. It's normal for these companies to do this very careful and very tactful corporate language to mask the facts when doing public statements or speaking to the press. Like for example saying that a game didn't sell well according to expectations, instead of saying that our game is fucked. Obviously we have eyes to see when they're being dishonest, but it is what it is. It's business. Corporations have to present this BS positive narrative out there onto the world and assure their current and potential future investors that everything is okay. But it's so weird seeing this in an internal memo. Reading the internal memo shows that the dishonesty runs deep within the company, like it's dishonesty, copium, and pretendium all mixed into one, and worse, a total lack of accountability for all the crap that him and his higher-ups are personally responsible for. We'll get into those in the later points of the video. Here are some timestamps. We're going to be going through all of this and calling it out. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel, and if you have any suggestions for stuff that you would like to see, let me know in the comments. Now let's jump in. In his first statement he says that first, Star Wars Outlaws' initial sales proved softer than expected, despite solid ratings from players that recognized the game's faithful transcription of the original trilogy's essence and richness. 76 on Metacritic, 3.85 out of 5 on PS Store, 4 out of 5 on Xbox, and 4.4 out of 5 on Epic. While players praised the sense of detail and the beauty of the graphics, the effectiveness of the reputation system, and endearing characters like Nyx, some also noted areas of improvement. The development teams are already hard at work on this, focusing on save issues, stealth mechanics, more frequent quest checkpoints, and better NPC AI. I'm confident that these updates will significantly improve the player experience by allowing us to deliver on its promise and make Star Wars Outlaws a must-play game and a long-term seller. In parallel, the publishing teams and developers are closely collaborating to increase the engagement with the game and boost player acquisition during Black Friday and the holiday season. Right off the bat, we have that soft language. Calling the initial sales of Star Wars Outlaws softer than expected is like saying that some aspects of Concord's initial launch didn't land the way that they intended. This is corporate copium language at its best. The issue is that, like I said, when it's for the press, it's expected, because you can just roll your eyes and just go like, yeah, right. But when it's internal, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? When you fail, you need to be able to address reality as it is. If you want your company to have a future, you have to have a real grasp of how much you fucked up. You need to be able to admit it to yourself, and you need to be straight up with your staff and demand better of everyone involved. Hell, you even need to consider firing people when they are responsible for a failure of this magnitude. I believe that this is how Cyberpunk 2077 went from a disastrous launch to an overhaul and an expansion that flipped this game from a disaster story to one of success. Eves moves on to point out the game's ratings on Metacritic, PS Store, Xbox, and Epic. First, let's just get this out of the way. Nobody cares about the ratings on the PS Store, Xbox, and Epic. These are not the places that people go to get an informed opinion or review of a game. This is just a little tiny convenience on the store page. You can't take it seriously or as an example of whether or not people like the game. You can't even write a proper review on these things. Metacritic itself is not a bad place to go by if you're taking the user score into account, but Eves only cited the critic score, which is completely useless to go by because we all know that most of these outlets have stopped knowing how to review video games a long time ago. Sometimes I say that these people are bought and paid for. When I say that, I don't mean that they're directly getting paid to write certain articles or reviews. What I mean is that these outlets are heavily influenced by the access that they have to these publishers, and they do anything that they can to maintain that access. So they're never going to be fully honest in their reviews when a game sucks. That's why these morons keep rating most of these bigger games between 7 and 10, and their articles are caked with that same sort of soft language. Sometimes what studios need to not end up like Ubisoft is some good old-fashioned, brutal honesty. But if these outlets do that and start handing out 3s, 4s, and 5s out of 10, they are going to get blacklisted. And then, next time a new Star Wars game gets made, they're not going to be flown out to fucking Orlando for a nice visit to Disneyland, as they were for Star Wars Outlaws and for Jedi Survivor. Or they're not going to get invited to other lovely press events for other games, or simply get sent early access codes to review these games on time. Companies are not obligated to send out early copies of their products to reviewers, and so if you want to maintain access, you need to heavily moderate yourself and stay on their good side. It's the same with YouTubers. Creators like Angry Joe, for example, were getting blacklisted for being honest in their reviews, while certain other creators were fined by softening their language. Eves should have mentioned that Star Wars Outlaws has a fucking 5 on Metacritic because that's what the score is for people who are actually paying to play the game. And instead of that nonsense about areas of improvement, he should have mentioned utterly disastrous failures, because that's what describes the combat system, which he doesn't even mention. The terrible stealth mechanics and the utterly retarded AI. Good luck fixing and improving all of these issues in hopes of making this a must-play in the long-term seller in the future, when you are even afraid of addressing these issues with the adequate degree of seriousness that they actually require. Next, déclaration de conneries. In today's ultra-competitive market, players expect extraordinary experiences and ultra-polished games on day one. We need to continue to improve when it comes to fine-tuning our games and delivering outstanding gameplay. This is what will enable Ubisoft to create the best games in the industry. Okay, what the fuck are you talking about? This man just keeps going down this road of delusional excuses that I just...
Planet item ready.
Today's market is definitely competitive, there is no doubt of that, but it's actually so easy to succeed in it. You look at the nicest surprises of this year, such as Stellar Blade, Black Myth Wukong, and Space Marine 2, and you don't even see anything special. These games aren't, you know, the most advanced in the tech department, trying to deliver the most detailed character models with their pores showing and shit, the most detailed facial animations or the most in-depth textures or the most advanced gameplay systems or expansive worlds or ray tracing technology or super advanced AI. There's no such thing here. They're just fun games mostly focused on combat. Their stories aren't even anything that goes above and beyond in terms of like big brain plot either, and even if they were, it's your job to hire and demand better from your writers. The point is that these aren't anything that should not be reachable by a studio with the amount of money, experience and workforce that Ubisoft has. In fact, it's damn shameful that Ubisoft cannot reach this bare minimum of quality. These games are perfect examples of good management, of having people in charge who care more about making a good game than office politics or predatory monetization. They're examples of what passionate creators are able to achieve when their vision is clear and when their focus is on the right things, even if it's their first time creating something in the AAA space. And of course, examples of exactly what is missing at Ubisoft: proper management and focus on creating good games. Gamers aren't even that picky anymore. We've been beaten down by shit content for so long that we will literally take anything that is simple and good at this point. Are some of us assholes sometimes? Oh sure, but I think that as a collective we have been far more demanding in the past. Our demands have grown shorter and shorter as time went by. We will always appreciate and praise when a studio goes above and beyond, but it's not a foundational demand for them to do so. Eves is trying to paint this picture of gamers being so extremely picky and demanding that we expect extraordinary experiences and games so ultra polished that they are nearly inconceivable. The truth is that we just expect good ones, and Ubisoft has fallen off so much, especially with Star Wars Outlaws, which is by far their worst game they've done in a while. I'll have a video on this soon, that they can't even meet the lowest expectations that we have for them. Ubisoft isn't even held up to the same standards as other companies within the industry. I don't even know how this guy has the balls to complain. They are like the fast food of this industry, except they are degrading so much that even fast food is becoming too good for them at this point. They're becoming like a fucking half-eaten, soggy sandwich that you find on the side of the road. Ubisoft has genuinely made great games in the past, but they never really created the best.